If a woman ever says these 6 things to you, consider this your warning. Don't wait until it's too late to protect your heart. Watch till the end to spot the red flags no one tells you about. Comment below where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and join thousands of men leveling up their love life now! You have to understand this from the very beginning. Words are not just words. Every time a woman speaks, she is revealing pieces of her inner world, whether consciously or unconsciously. And when certain phrases keep coming up, they are not random, they are warning signs. The first key to protecting yourself, the first step before investing any more time, energy, or emotion, is learning to recognize these early verbal cues. Imagine walking into a room and hearing a soft alarm that only a few men can actually notice. That alarm is her language. She may not even realize she is giving it, but it is there, and if you ignore it, you do so at your own risk. These statements often appear subtle at first. They might sound like jokes, casual complaints, or even expressions of vulnerability. But if you pay attention, you'll see patterns emerging, patterns that point to manipulation, control, or dishonesty. For example, phrases that subtly undermine your confidence, that make you question your perception of reality, or that try to shift blame onto you for things you haven't done, are not merely quirks of personality. They are signals of deeper character traits that will eventually dictate how she treats you in the long term. You might think, oh, she's just stressed. She doesn't mean it. But stress is temporary, character is permanent. This is why spotting these verbal warning signs early is crucial. It allows you to act before you are too invested, before emotions cloud judgment, and before patterns take root. Men often fall into the trap of rationalizing these phrases, of creating excuses because it feels uncomfortable to confront the truth. They tell themselves, she's just having a bad day, or maybe I'm overreacting. But over time, these statements accumulate, forming a psychological footprint. And just like footprints in sand, they show the direction of the person walking alongside you. If every step leaves a mark of manipulation or emotional toxicity, it's not a path you want to follow. Learning to hear these statements for what they really are requires discipline and awareness. It requires developing a sense of emotional literacy, the ability to read not just words, but the intent behind them. The irony is that many men ignore these cues because they confuse emotional intensity with emotional connection. She might seem passionate, dramatic, or intensely invested in interactions, and you might feel flattered, even needed. But intensity is not the same as honesty, and drama is not the same as love. When a woman repeatedly uses phrases that challenge your self-worth, dismiss your perspective, or demand that you prove your loyalty, it is not a test of love. It is a test of compliance. And failing this test has nothing to do with love. It has everything to do with whether you are willing to tolerate toxic behavior. Recognizing this early is not about cynicism, it is about self-preservation. There is also a philosophical layer here, one that connects deeply with human behavior. Words are reflections of thought. If she habitually expresses negativity, suspicion, or a lack of accountability in her words, it is a mirror of the mental and emotional framework she carries. Think of it as a window into her operating system. And just as you wouldn't install software on your computer that is riddled with bugs, you shouldn't allow your heart to become infected with patterns of emotional instability. The moment you begin to notice these verbal signals, it is your responsibility to observe them without judgment, without immediate reaction, but with clarity. Ask yourself, is this a person whose language I want shaping my reality? Am I willing to invest in someone whose words foreshadow pain? Your answer to these questions will determine whether you proceed or protect yourself by walking away. What makes this skill so critical is that it isn't about a single phrase or a single interaction. It's about consistency, about paying attention to recurring themes. A woman who repeatedly speaks in ways that diminish, control, or manipulate is telling you who she is at her core, whether she wants to admit it or not. Men who are aware of this don't wait for drama to explode. They recognize the early signs and make decisive choices. This is where intelligence and intuition meet. It's not reactive behavior. It's strategic foresight applied to emotional relationships. And in a world where so many men learn this too late, mastering this awareness is a form of empowerment. So listen carefully to the words being spoken around you. Don't dismiss what seems subtle. Don't rationalize away what triggers a small alarm in your chest. Words are the tip of the iceberg, and underneath lie intentions, beliefs, and emotional patterns that will shape your life if you allow them. Protecting yourself is not selfish, it is necessary. It is the foundation upon which every meaningful relationship must be built. And if at any point her words reveal a pattern of manipulation, control, or deceit, have the courage to act. Run if you must. Do not wait for love to blind you to reality. Because here's the truth you need to carry with you. Recognizing the warning signs early doesn't make you paranoid, it makes you wise. And wisdom in relationships is not measured by how long you stay, it is measured by how well you protect your heart while still remaining open to connection. Never underestimate the power of words. They're the first line of defense and the first opportunity to make a choice that could change your life. Pay attention, trust yourself, and act decisively. Your future self will thank you once you've recognized the warning signs in her words. The next step is perhaps the most crucial, protecting yourself emotionally and mentally. This is where so many men falter. They see the red flags, they feel the alarm bells, but they convince themselves that love or desire will somehow fix what is fundamentally wrong. The truth is, no amount of charm, effort, or patience can change a person who is committed to patterns that hurt others. Protecting yourself is not a matter of arrogance or avoidance. It is a matter of survival and self-respect. Emotional and mental boundaries are not optional. They are essential. Without them, you risk losing not only your time and energy, but your sense of identity and the peace of mind that every man deserves. It's easy to underestimate the power of words, actions, and subtle manipulations on the psyche. They act like water slowly eroding rock, often going unnoticed until you realize your confidence, clarity, and sense of self have been chipped away. When a woman consistently uses phrases that belittle, guilt, or manipulate, it begins to shape your perception of reality. Your mind starts questioning itself. Am I too sensitive? Did I overreact? The danger lies in doubting your own instincts. That is why protecting yourself requires a conscious commitment to trust your inner voice. Listen to the discomfort, the unease, the small but persistent alarms in your chest. They are your internal compass guiding you away from toxic entanglement. Self-protection also requires clarity about what you will and will not tolerate. Too often, men fall into the trap of hoping the other person will change, rationalizing behaviors that clearly indicate deeper issues. But hope is not strategy. A wise man approaches relationships with both open-heartedness and discernment. You can care deeply and still decide to walk away when someone's words and actions consistently threaten your well-being. Establishing boundaries doesn't make you cold, it makes you intelligent. It signals that you value yourself enough to refuse emotional harm, and it also sends a clear message to the other person about the standards you hold. Boundaries are not barriers to love, they are the foundation of healthy, sustainable connection. Psychologically, this approach is rooted in the understanding of cause and effect. Every toxic pattern she displays will eventually manifest consequences in your life, whether through stress, self-doubt, or erosion of your personal goals. Men who ignore these early signs often find themselves trapped in a cycle of frustration and emotional depletion. Protecting yourself is about breaking that cycle before it starts. It's about recognizing that your time, energy, and emotional bandwidth are finite resources. Investing them in someone who diminishes you is not just unwise, it is dangerous to your personal growth. There is also a deeper philosophical truth here. You cannot control the other person's behavior, but you can control your response. Many men mistakenly believe that love requires sacrifice without boundaries, that enduring toxicity is somehow noble. But endurance without discernment is not strength. It is self-sabotage. By choosing to protect yourself, you reclaim power over your emotional world. You decide where your energy goes, how your mind is treated, and who gets access to your most intimate thoughts and feelings. This is not ego, it is sovereignty. It is the recognition that emotional and mental well-being is not negotiable. The act of walking away or setting firm boundaries can be emotionally challenging, even if it is the right choice. There is fear, guilt, and sometimes shame that arises when we consider leaving someone who, despite the warning signs, may feel familiar or desirable. This is where courage comes into play. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is acting wisely despite fear. When you recognize that her words or actions indicate a pattern that could ultimately harm you, the most courageous act is often to distance yourself. To remain in a situation that erodes your mind and heart is not courage, it is complacency. True strength is measured in foresight and self-respect, in the ability to say enough before the damage is done. Protecting yourself also teaches a subtle but powerful lesson about human psychology. People respond to boundaries. When you refuse to tolerate manipulation, disrespect, or dishonesty, you create a standard for how others interact with you. Some will respect it, some will push against it, and some will reveal their true colors. In every case, you gain clarity. You learn who genuinely values you and who is merely testing or draining you. This knowledge is invaluable because it prevents prolonged suffering and allows you to focus on relationships that uplift rather than diminish. Ultimately, emotional and mental protection is about alignment, aligning your actions with your values, your instincts, and your long-term goals. It's about refusing to let short-term desire override your well-being. A man who understands this walks through life with a quiet authority, a sense of inner security that comes not from control over others, but from mastery over himself. He understands that self-preservation is the first step toward genuine connection. Without it, any love he gives risks being entangled with pain, confusion, and regret. So remember, this protecting yourself is not a passive act. It is an active commitment to your own clarity, growth, and dignity. Every time you honor your boundaries, every time you refuse to compromise your peace of mind, you are reinforcing a principle that will guide every aspect of your life. Do not wait until emotional depletion forces your hand. Recognize the warning signs, trust your instincts, and act decisively. In the end, your ability to protect yourself emotionally and mentally is not just about avoiding pain. It is about preserving the life, confidence, and freedom you deserve. Because here's the truth to carry with you: a man who protects his heart is a man who cannot be broken by words alone. Protect yourself, act wisely, and let every choice you make honor the value of your own mind and spirit. By now, you've learned to recognize the words that serve as red flags, and you've understood the necessity of protecting yourself emotionally and mentally. But awareness alone is not enough. There is a deeper layer to consider: the patterns behind the words. A single statement can sometimes be a mistake, a moment of stress, or even vulnerability. But when these statements repeat, when they form a recognizable pattern, they reveal the true nature of the person in front of you. Patterns are the ultimate window into human behavior because they are consistent and revealing far beyond isolated incidents. A man who ignores patterns is like a sailor navigating a stormy sea without reading the stars. He will inevitably lose his way. Patterns are not always dramatic. They are often subtle, almost imperceptible, but their impact compounds over time. For instance, a woman who consistently shifts blame onto you, even in minor disagreements, is showing a fundamental inability to take accountability. A woman who repeatedly criticizes your choices, belittles your achievements, or uses guilt to control outcomes is revealing a deeper psychological dynamic, one that will continue to affect every interaction. These recurring behaviors are not trivial. They are signals of how her mind operates under stress, how she views relationships, and ultimately, how she will treat you in the long run. Understanding patterns allows you to see beyond the charm, the initial attraction, and the surface-level connection. It is insight into the very architecture of her personality. Many men underestimate the importance of noticing these patterns because it requires observation, patience, and, most importantly, honesty with oneself. It is far easier to rationalize, excuse, or hope that things will improve, yet hope without discernment is a dangerous lens. It clouds judgment and dulls instinct. To see patterns clearly, you must cultivate both attention and courage. Attention to what is consistent and courage to act when consistency reveals a truth you may not want to face. This is not about cynicism or pessimism. It is about clarity. You are training your mind to recognize reality, not fantasy, to observe the structural elements of human behavior instead of being caught in the emotional whirlwind of fleeting words or charm. Psychologically, patterns speak louder than individual incidents because the human brain is wired to detect repetition. Repetition is not coincidence, it is a reflection of character, intent, and emotional blueprint. A woman who constantly expresses jealousy, distrust, or subtle manipulation is not merely experiencing temporary feelings. She is demonstrating a cognitive and emotional habit. Recognizing this allows you to understand not just what she is doing, but why she does it, and more importantly, whether you are willing to invest in a person whose natural patterns threaten your peace, confidence, and growth. To ignore patterns is to surrender control of your own life to forces you could have anticipated. The philosophical insight here is profound. Life is an accumulation of patterns, and relationships are a reflection of how well two patterns harmonize or clash. Every interaction you have, Every repeated phrase, every recurring behavior is part of an ongoing symphony of human behavior. Some harmonies elevate you, support your growth, and enhance your well-being. Others create dissonance, tension, and damage over time. Learning to identify these patterns early is akin to learning to read music before the performance begins. You are no longer blindly participating in a chaotic composition. You can choose to play, or you can walk away before the discord takes its toll. There is also an element of self-respect tied to recognizing patterns. A man who understands that repeated behaviors reveal true intentions does not excuse, rationalize, or justify them. He does not hope for sudden transformation or rely on charm or emotion to mask reality. Instead, he acts with clarity, preserving his energy, his focus, and his heart. Recognizing patterns is not a cold, detached exercise. It is a strategic, compassionate act toward oneself. It is a declaration that your emotional and mental resources are valuable and non-negotiable. To invest in someone whose patterns suggest harm is to gamble with more than money. It is to gamble with your sense of self, your clarity, and your future happiness. Patterns also provide predictive power. Once you can identify them, you can anticipate behavior and make informed decisions. This is the difference between reacting to events and proactively shaping your own life. By observing the recurring statements, actions, and subtle behaviors, you gain foresight. You no longer need to wait for chaos to erupt or for betrayal to occur. You see the trajectory clearly and can decide whether it aligns with your goals, values, and emotional needs. In a sense, patterns are nature's way of giving you a roadmap. You can either follow it toward wisdom or ignore it at your own peril. Ultimately, recognizing patterns is the culmination of awareness and protection. It is where knowledge meets action. A man who understands patterns is empowered to act decisively, to walk away when necessary, or to engage wisely with someone whose patterns align with his own values and goals. Without this awareness, even the most cautious man can be caught in a web of emotional manipulation and disappointment. With it, he navigates relationships with authority, confidence, and clarity, knowing that he has both observed reality and respected his own limits. So remember this: words reveal, boundaries protect, but patterns confirm. By observing patterns, you move beyond temporary impressions into deep understanding. You gain foresight, clarity, and empowerment. And if the patterns reveal danger, manipulation, or emotional harm, the wisest choice is always to act. Don't wait for temporary charm to mask recurring behavior. Don't let repeated warnings pass unnoticed. Your future, your peace, and your self-respect depend on your ability to see clearly, understand patterns, and make decisions that honor your mind and your heart. Because here's the final truth to carry with you: patterns do not lie. If you see them, respect them. If they point toward harm, walk away. Your life, your freedom, and your emotional sovereignty depend on it.